Guys, I thought we were done for. I thought we were cooked, but we're not, because a Nintendo Direct is coming tomorrow. Yeah, so the Switch might not be going out with Whimper after all, even though I totally thought it was, because the last Nintendo Direct was anything but spectacular. Don't get me wrong, the Mario remakes were great, the spin-offs not so much, but just like a whole bunch of Mario games, I figured that that was just Nintendo's way of being like, guys, we don't have anything for you anymore. We're just trying to focus on our next system, which, if you know anything about the leaks, is coming out next spring in 2025. However, now I need to rethink my entire life because this Direct is coming as a replacement for E3, which, if you guys don't already know, Nintendo pulled out of E3 a few years ago, has not been a part of it since, but they still reserve a lot of special announcements for this time of year. So I'm like, okay, if we're at the end of the Switch's life cycle, what could there possibly be? On top of that, and this is a trend I've noticed in the past, is that this Direct is taking place at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Sorry for you guys over in the Pacific, you guys gotta get up at 7. So I've noticed that the later in the day the Direct is, the better it is. At least that's kind of been the case in the past. Now this could be an exception, you never know. There's always exceptions to everything. But what heavy hitters could Nintendo possibly have for us right now? Especially with the Switch having only half a year left in its lifespan. Now I am betting on a heavy hitter or two, or at least what I consider to be a heavy hitter or two. So if you have any more reserved, or maybe some other outlandish predictions, let me know down in the comments and we will talk about it. So the first game series that definitely comes to mind when I think of what we might see is Metroid. Guys, can you believe it's been 7 years since Metroid Prime 4 was announced, which is kind of crazy. It's kind of going through development hell, and I don't think we're going to see it here. I actually think it's going to be a Switch 2 title at this point, but I think we might actually see some sort of Metroid spin-off game. Now, I know, Metroid spin-offs have historically not done very well, at least commercially. But Metroid is in an all-time high right now. There have been so many people who have gotten into or gotten back into the series. Metroid Dread was fantastic. It sold decently well, especially for a Metroid title. And Metroid Prime Remastered definitely also showed that people still have a vested interest in the series, as that one also sold, I think, around 1 million, at least 1 million copies. And like, again, for Metroid, that's huge. So Nintendo might actually give this another shot. As for the kind of spin-off we can see, I can't speak much for what the gameplay or what the game itself might be like, but I do think that they are going to stick to Samus being the main character, because every time they've tried to pull away from her in the past, it has not worked. I think Nintendo is finally realizing that what people like in Metroid, at least a major core component of what people like in Metroid, is Samus herself. Granted, her story might be over after Metroid Dread, or at least reaching the end of her story, but similarly to what Metroid Prime has done in the past, they could insert a story in the past so that there's more to do with the character and the world. Metroid has quickly become one of my favorite game franchises. I loved the Prime trilogy, I loved Dread, I appreciate Super Metroid for what it is, even though it's not really for me, and I also enjoyed my time with Samus Returns on the 3DS. So I don't know about you guys, but I would be a happy camper with another Metroid game announced tomorrow. Now let's move on to a first-party possibility, and this is one that I know people will love if it actually happens, myself included, but probably everyone else around me too, and that is if The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, and Wind Waker got their HD pack finally released for Nintendo Switch and not being stuck on the Wii U anymore, which is kind of crazy that they have not done this yet. This would be a fine way to continue some sales towards the end of the Switch's lifespan with games that we know are going to print money. Now you might be wondering why I said HD pack. Well, I'm referring to both games together. I think that if they release these physically, it would be like in the same box, or if they release them digitally, maybe they come as one software that you download and it has both games and there's like a new menu that you pick between them, possibly. Or they might sell them separately, or both, who knows. Regardless, I love me some Twilight Princess. I know people who love them some Wind Waker. Again, a game that's not for me, but I appreciate it for what it is. And yeah, this would absolutely fly off the shelves, or metaphorical shelves, digitally as well. So I'm really hoping they finally do this in the final year, and also because we're definitely not getting a mainline Zelda for a long time, so remakes and ports and all of that jazz is definitely the perfect way to go with Zelda for a few years now. Now, while this may not be the heaviest of hitters, at least for some of us, some people might really appreciate this, and that is if a Kirby game was announced for the Switch in its final year. This would be a good franchise to also put a cherry on top, quite literally, since Kirby looks like a little cherry. Yeah, it's been a few years since the last Kirby game, and I don't think these are too hard for Nintendo to make, and it's not like that much of an investment, so they could totally just throw out one more Kirby game in this final year. Honestly, that really does it for first-party titles. We already know all the Mario games coming, I'm pretty sure. We might also see some new games be added to all the digital consoles on the Switch, like the Nintendo 64 and the Super Nintendo, yada yada. I know a lot of people are still clamoring for Pokemon to come to the virtual consoles. I don't think this is gonna happen. Believe me, I would be ecstatic if it did. I would love to play Pokemon Crystal on a Switch instead of on my phone. But I think this is something that Game Freak and Nintendo both don't want to do. And I'm viewing that from like a marketing standpoint. Yes, they would sell, but also they might diminish their newer releases, and they definitely don't want to do that. But speaking of Pokemon, I have actually seen a lot of people guess that there's going to be another Pokemon game before Legend Zeta-A releases in 2025, which I also do predict will be on the Switch too, even if there is or isn't a simultaneous release on the Switch 1. So I want to address this real quick. I don't think we're getting a mainline Pokemon game this year. If we're gonna get any, it's more likely going to be a spin-off. Now, people might come for me if they watch this video after and there was somehow a mainline Pokemon game announced, but again, I really don't think so. The odds of that are so unlikely because we know how much Game Freak struggles making these games. They're not gonna throw out another game in this short amount of time. Even for them, that's ridiculous. So I think that we're still going to have that hiatus before Legend Zeta-A. But hey, time will tell. I should also address my other fandom that I know is really large in my audience, and that is Bayonetta. I really don't think we're getting a Bayonetta game either. If we do, obviously it would be a spin-off, but seeing as to how long it took for them to make Bayonetta Origins, again, I think it's going to be a while before we see another Bayonetta game, even if it is just a spin-off. Platinum Games isn't that large of a studio. They really aren't, and they're probably working on their next big title too, and again, as we know from leaks, the Switch 2 dev kits have been issued to a bunch of different game developers, and Platinum Games is likely one of them since they've had such a close relationship with Nintendo this last era. And you know me, I'm still hoping for that Bayo 3 remaster, because boy howdy does that game need it. And a few extra chapters that really explain the story couldn't hurt either. Now, the final thing we probably will see in this Nintendo Direct is some third-party games and third-party ports of games. Now, what these games could be, I have no idea, because a lot of my favorites have already made it onto the Switch. So if you know of any, please comment them down below. I will also take recommendations because I love playing all sorts of new games. I play indie games, action games, yada yada, everything. So buckle up, kiddos, because I have no idea what to expect tomorrow, and I doubt you do either. So if you need some fun videos to fill your time while you wait, feel free to check out some of mine, like this one here where I do a deep dive into Pokemon Legends Zeta-A. Like, I go over things that no one else talks about. Come on, go ahead and watch. Either way, make sure you stay subscribed so that I get to see you all more, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I've been johtojonny. Peace out.